I've already seen it, but I didn't know that there were these.
Neither did I, or tilted one way or the other.
Right.
East or west.
And typically what ends up, what I end up seeing is, they put in their paved driveway and then they have a little ridge on that side.
So there's a place in Odin. Well, that's him. That last one here. Bunch of people. And she has her dad. And he said his name up there.
I've heard that.
Now, work and play is farther away.
Hi.
I forget where it was.
No sign and sheet?
It's farther away.
No. Yeah. Are we still doing those?
No, remember we stopped, Jeff?
Did we stop?
A, because
No,
COVID, and B, because it's not required technically.
Right.
It's just, it helps us, but we ask their name when they speak, so it's.
Highland Trail. Somebody did. I've been busy just sending them.
Okay.
I was looking at your hands, they're pretty beat up. Is that from?
I'm doing well, how are you?
Oh, and wherever you want to sit.
Okay.
Your name tag's portable.
Some of that is so.
So,
Hi, how are
They
you?
don't want to. Until they let go.
It looks like we have,
Beth on the line.
Well, it's good that you're taking practice and you know how those things together.
I did notice that there's kind of like two lines, right? And the seeds kind of alternate between them.
Well, and it's kind of group, so I had to sacrifice the top row.
Interesting.
Because the reason when you put it together.
hey Beth, can you hear us?
Oh, yeah.
And the wood is very brittle. And they all
Do you know
go
what the sign is?
great grip.
Thin is, like, if I were to use this for now.
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, Beth, I was just wondering if you could hear us. I was just testing. to see-
I can hear you just fine. Yes.
1, 2, 3 or something.
This was something super simple and short, right?
I think it's hard to not do.
Okay, so I wasn't sure if, did you print off?
I
Well, I guess some of it's right here, maybe they printed some for us, right?
Not all.
Yeah.
These are some
And
of
I think that-
maybe some of the development.
Oh, I think that's a good thing. I think that's good.
You know,
Usually you get.
Good to see you. You too. Hi. So what's the distance on that?
How are you?
Good, how are you doing?
Good, thank you. It's so bad with this. If I go to settings, I forget where I find this.
Room there.
Soft, not up.
Oh, Mary, looks like you have to stand.
I do.
Here.
Is it under general?
You sure? I didn't know.
No, I was
Trying to spread it out a little more.
I'm always so bad at like, what you click on the, line word is it's up here.
Hello, hello. Meet your friend.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good. Did you say he's city 824?
I'm on chair day. Chair day.
Oh,
I see another one.
okay.
Computer must have remembered.
That's good. I couldn't remember if it was here another time.
Do you recall the password for the Wi-Fi?
I think it's 160 Zoll ST.
Why should it be emergency at 6:30?
Say 126.
We don't remember about tabs.
Practicing your multitasking?
Does it have any caps or punctuation or spaces?
I don't think so.
Okay, thank you.
Victor,
Yes,
the Wi-Fi password is 160 Zoll ST, right?
yes, it's lowercase.
All lowercase, yeah.
160 ZOLLST.
Yeah. It's our address, so.
That's good to know. Okay.
So which one is this one?
So it was it was the -24, and then it was 160 Zoll ST.
see him.
Zoll, 2 L's and 1 L.
I think it's two.
160.
Yeah, and then 160 Zoll and then ST. So I'm taking it online.
Almost to the north of the curve, as you get the left, is huge.
Good to see you.
Hi, Andrew. How are you?
Oh, I have to get there eventually.
All right.
Like pushing back at the corner a little bit, aren't they?
Yes.
Usually we're more.
Yeah, we do. I think we're distanced from everything.
Oh, except each other.
Oh,
I
yeah.
was gonna say,
Kind of a half,
We're all in.
right?
Yeah, we're all in for it. Yeah. So. I've had it and got my second shot. So, yeah, it's as good as it can get.
you're so good.
Pretty good.
Strap everything. It's got a rig.
Oh,
This laptop's getting old. So this meeting can only be so long. I'll be out of battery.
Oh, will you? I'm gonna try a different one. You got to pop one up?
No,
Oh.
no, I just have, I had this.
I just.
Do you think if I
downloaded it.
go to my, just my email,
Jessica.
it'll show up? Even if I'm on my. So added tech. Or maybe it isn't.
Yeah, because you already had it, downloaded, so.
Oh, so it's already here. Oh,
It should,
good.
it should pop up there, it's just this PDF.
Oh, good, thank you.
Mine, all the attachments come as a WinDAT
Yeah.
file. So I found this. It's one of these things. It's probably a huge virus, but it's TNEF, and I can dump it in there, and then it opens the whole message. But otherwise, anything Jeff sends me or anything that comes from the city is the file I can't open.
Oh, it's just because mine does open stuff.
Yeah, and this is old. I don't know that it might. I had it with the same problem with the older Mac, and this one's newer. Somebody told me it's a Microsoft mail program, like their mail server
Oh.
conflict with that. So.
Talking about that windmill, that.
Yeah, and I always just use this.
It's a Microsoft issue.
Yeah, so I found a little converter years ago. And there are no Apple. Let's get this straight. There are no Apple issues
Yeah.
other than Microsoft. Yeah.
So when I email out the packet,
Yeah.
first thing that we also put it on the city website,
Yeah.
and you should be able to download the PDF there as well, and it shouldn't be.
And that always works. And then I found this, years ago, I found this converter thing and I put it in there.
Fixes it.
But somebody told me that. I said, yeah, it's a Apple to Microsoft.
Yeah, it's because we're using Microsoft Outlook
Yeah.
to send it, and then you're receiving it on an Apple product.
Yeah.
That somehow is what creates that windmill.dat issue.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And if you Google it, it pops right up.
yeah.
It works. But yeah, I forgot you guys put them on the website too. So.
And I usually specify in there that it can also be downloaded, just to remind people.
It was easy to solve, but thank you. That really-
You've been here a long time. You're a long time. Sometimes.
Holy chairs are awesome.
Jack is on.
Jack Deegan here by Zoom.
Oh, and George is there too.
Yep, George Pete here.
George, did you hear me?
Yes.
Thank you.
$5:30. Call the meeting to order.
No.
And Jeff,
Ready for a roll call?
Yes, please.
All right. Start with Beth Rahali.
We want to speak up a little.
Beth, can you hear me?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm here, but I'm in Vero Beach, Florida.
Oh, I'll speak up. Mary Catherine Hanna.
Here.
Emily Dubay.
Here.
Jack Deegan.
Here, Harbor Springs, Michigan.
George Pete,
Here, Grosse Pointe, Michigan.
Bill Mulder,
Here.
Mark Bidet,
Here.
Andrew Bowman,
Here.
Al Dyke.
Here.
And is Jack Krieger on Zoom?
Yep,
Jacob?
here. On
All
Zoom.
right.
Harbor-
Great, we have a quorum, we have a full board.
Okay, minutes from the March 18th, 2021 meeting. Are there any comments or corrections on the minutes?
Move that they be approved.
I only had one, and it was the, under the Bowman properties instead of Bomar, or it's Bomar properties instead of Bowman. So that under the State Street, 130 State Street approval, which of course now I can't find.
It's on page 2, but I see Bowman and Bowman.
Yeah, the property owner's name, I think it's stated once, and it's Bomar Properties. But. Yep. 130, it's under B, site plan review, third or fourth paragraph down. Other than that, I don't have any questions. We have a motion to approve.
I'll make that motion.
Okay.
Second.
The mask. We probably should call the roll since we have some here and some virtual.
Yes.
All right. Al Dyke.
Here. Yes.
Andrew Bowman.
Still here.
Andrew Bowman.
Yes.
Mark Bidet.
Yes.
Bill Mulder.
Yes.
George Pete.
Yes.
Jack Deegan.
Yes.
Emily Dubé.
Yes.
Mary Catherine Hanna.
Yes.
Beth Rahali.
Yes.
Motion passes.
Okay, moving on to public comment and correspondence. Looks like we had a few emails for something that is on the agenda. Anyone here to comment either in person or online on something that's not on the agenda? Going once, going twice. Anyone online comments, Victor?
Not that I see. Let me check the YouTube. And nothing.
Okay. Moving on to new and old business. First item is a public hearing for Harbor Cottage's condos, which was canceled. So.
And I
anyone's
just
here?
want to take just 2 seconds
Sure.
to quickly explain. So if anybody is here in person or online for that topic, Harbor Cottage's condo is the cottage or the condo project that's between 2nd and 3rd Street on the west side of town, downtown. Initially, we had a request from them to modify their condo project documents. But in research, we found out that they had actually done that back in 2013. So because it had already been done, we did not see the need to rehash the issue again. Really what they were asking to do in the original draft of the condo documents, they were not permitted to have attached garages. And in 2013, they modified it so that they could. And we just initially didn't see that that had been acted upon by the Planning Commission because that was done as a some type of special land use for cluster development.
Yep.
So because the issue was already done, we felt we could cancel that topic and not do it again.
Great. Moving on to a public hearing for the special land use 372 West Summit Street for a guest quarters. We had Bill, I believe you're the applicant.
I am, so I'm
Okay.
stepping to the other side of the table.
And we should have a motion to open the public hearing.
Do we have a motion to open the public hearing on 372 West Summit Street guest quarters application?
I make the motion to open.
I'll support that motion.
You get one of these.
I will. I'll get in there fast.
Okay, so the public hearing has been opened. Might ask if it's appropriate, just for everybody has any comments, but maybe just a quick summary of what's being applied for. And I imagine if you showed up to comment, you understand what's being applied for, but it might just be for anybody who's online. So.
I'll describe the request.
Sure.
Victor, what microphone are we using?
Yeah.
Great. Well, hello, Planning Commission. Look good in this side. And the purpose of this request is to ask for your special land use for guest quarters above a new detached garage or house on 372 West Summit. The purpose is to add more space for family and friends. And the structure will replace an existing, possibly 100-year-old barn that's there today. And it's charming and all, but that for make more sense to have better, more modern space that was very safe for guests. So we worked hard to scrupulously comply with the requirements for guest quarters. And Larry's done an analysis of that, which I suspect you'll hear about. It'll be a first-class project, very high quality, and will be consistent with and fit in well for all right, that's the overview. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Maybe start with anyone in the audience, and then we can move online just to sort of make sure we don't miss anybody. Is there anyone here in the audience that has comments or concerns regarding the application for the special land use guest quarters? Hearing none. Is there anyone online commenting? Questions?
I don't see anyone on Zoom with comment. I don't see anyone.
Okay.
We did have one piece of correspondence that we received a day or two ago from a property owner on Ann Street that was in favor of the project. And you have a copy of that letter that was in front of you at the table here.
Great. With no public comment, do we have a motion to close the public hearing and move to discussion?
I would so move. Jack Deegan.
Second.
Okay, would you please call the roll for the motion to close the public hearing?
All right. Beth Holly,
Yes.
Mary Catherine Hannah,
Yes.
Emily Dubé,
Yes.
Jack Deegan,
Yes.
George Pete,
Yes.
Mulder is abstaining. Mark Boudet,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Al Dyker,
Yes, present.
President.
present. Public hearing is closed.
Okay, now we'll move to a discussion amongst the planning commission. And if the public does have any questions during that time, just let us know. But Larry, you had a summary memo of the application after your review. Looked like it spoke for itself, but we just.
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman. I'll try to keep it brief. My 6-page memo on this topic because of all the standards we have in the zoning code for this. This is an accessory building they want to build. They're taking down an existing building that's 2-story and putting up a 2-story accessory building that will be larger. The new building is in compliance with all of the accessory building standards as applied to this piece of property and the existing dwelling unit. It meets the height requirement. It's not taller than the house. There's also criteria in here regarding the site plan for this, and they have submitted statements regarding the use and how it will not change the use of the property. It's just going to be a little bit bigger of a building, and with the guest quarters up above, it'll probably see more activity. They've answered all those questions. On page 5 of my memo, I provide you with recommendation that references our findings regarding the standards for an accessory building in section 3021 A through C. The site plan review standards in 2001, section 2001, 1A through C. Also the special use standards in 2100, 1 through 7, as submitted by the applicant. I'm suggesting that there's no reason not to approve this based on their compliance with the zoning standards that we have. Again, this recommendation is without benefit of public input or comments, but at the same time, we had one positive comment, so there's nothing, in my opinion, that prohibits you from making a positive decision on this. Mr. Chairman.
Anyone here at the table or online that's on the planning commission have any questions for either Larry or the applicant?
No.
No.
Okay.
No.
With no other comments, we look for a motion to approve as submitted.
I'll make that.
I would second that. Do we have to go through the 7 steps? I'm curious though.
We don't need to, but the motion should recognize that the basis for the positive motion are the 3 standards, the 3 elements listed on the bottom of page 5, that they have been,
Matt,
the applicant is in compliance with those standards.
I'm good then with seconding it.
And it is, usually I think we make the applicant stand and solemnly swear they understand the rental limitations. And so that's all part of what the finding that we've made and part of the motion. So that's, with no, is there any further discussion on the motion? Everybody understand the motion?
Roll call.
Please.
We'll start with Mark Boudet,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Al Dyka,
Yes.
Beth Rahali,
Yes.
Mary Catherine Hannah,
Yes.
Emily Dubé,
Yes.
Jack Deegan,
Yes.
George Pete,
Yes.
and Bill Mulder abstains.
Great. Thank you.
Chairman, may I rejoin?
Absolutely. The long walk. No.
Let's say it's not a one. Yeah.
Okay, moving on to D, new and old business, public hearing for request for rezoning at 153 Zoll Street. It would be from RM, which is residential multiple, to R2. Probably it would be helpful before we open the public hearing, maybe just have Larry or Jeff just give a quick summary of what's being applied for, and then we can open the public hearing. That might make more sense. If that's okay with everybody.
This piece of property is located at 153 Zoll Street, which is actually just west of us right here where we sit at City Hall. Currently, the property is zoned RM, which is a multiple family zoning designation, which does allow a single family home to exist on the property as a conforming use, provided it meets the standards of the residential district, the R1B standards. They're requesting that the property be rezoned from multiple family residential to a R2 district that would also permit a single family home, but also then permits guest quarters to be present on the property. And there's a lot of property adjacent north and west of this property that is also zoned R2. So in this, as I said, this property is adjacent to that. Then that is a real brief overview of why the applicant desires this, so they can build an additional accessory building on the property and have guest quarters above it. Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Everyone, anyone have any questions for Larry as to the application before we open the public hearing? Okay. Do we have a motion to open the public hearing on the rezoning on Zoll Street?
I move we open the public hearing on this.
Okay.
Support.
All right. We can now take public comment on the application. Is there someone here representing the applicant? Okay. And if you wanted to add anything to Larry's overview, and then we can, and just for the public comments, if you could please address them to the Planning Commission. That way we can help sort of moderate things, and also with people online, we want to make sure everybody gets a chance to speak.
I just wanted to address how the building will be used a little bit. I brought a picture in. So this is Peter's car that he probably intends to put in this garage. He has a similar garage back home in the timber frame, and that's how the garage itself will be used. And then if you have SP2 in front of you, you can see that there's also this kind of an outdoor porch with a fireplace that just places the wine in front of the fire. It's a really beautiful backyard. There's a lot of mature trees. And then a little powder room in the garage if you're out tinkering with the car, or if you had too much wine, right there. That's is quite a bit of residential in the neighborhood. We're asking to kind of lessen the load. I think the community by going down to an R2, just single family residence. They've just put a lot of money and time into remodeling the existing house. And I think they can be there for a while and use this use for a while. The house definitely is good to go for 100 years.
We have a few correspondence, Jeff, that some were in the packet, others we're trying to kind of read as we sit.
Yes, so we received I received one email from Mike Martin, who's in favor of the project. And then we have these two other letters that were sent to me via email, which are quite lengthy and detailed, show it with some concerns regarding the project. And I think that those people are here. I believe the one, let's see, we've got one from the law offices of Nelson Forster and Stickovich, and I believe that Amy is on Zoom, so she may want to comment about some of her things that she has there. And I think you.
Sorry, do you want me to go now or do you want me to wait?
Jeff, did you have any other comments, or we could go ahead and
No,
start with?
if you would like
Okay.
to, yeah.
Amy, if you wanted to go ahead and comment, that might be helpful, because that way we're all trying to read your email, and this would probably speed that up. So.
Sure. I represent the Bay Street Cottages Association. They retained me at the end of last week because they do have some concerns regarding the rezoning, which would allow the building. The primary concern is they have pretty significant drainage issues. That was the first point in my letter, that the cottages that border where there used to be a hedge, I think the hedge is depicted on the sketch, but actually most of it has been removed. So there's pretty significant concerns of how the removal of the hedge, this additional building, would affect the drainage issues that they're having. And I believe the property that is already existing on 153 Zoll has also had some drainage issues. And in that regard, I did get a note from one of the homeowners that said perhaps we could take a look at the civil engineering drawings, because he had an engineer take a look at it and it looks like the proposed building is at a higher level, which could exacerbate the drainage issues. So that was the first concern. A second concern is privacy issues. Again, there was a hedge, and because I kind of got into this at the last minute, we're not clear if this hedge is supposed to be there, if it was on the original plat as something that's required in between these two properties. It does appear that part of it is on what is owned by the association and the other part of it is owned by 153 Zoll, and that's the part that was removed. There's some posts that are in there now, and it looks like they're trying to put in a fence. So again, that raises issues as to whether if the hedge is required, the association is going to be able to put it back in if these fence posts are existing. Another concern, since this is a garage, we're kind of unsure as to how the car is going to get back there, if it's going back and forth, because it doesn't look like there's any driveway or any space for a driveway, which again can go to the privacy issues and the drainage issues. And then there was also a concern about noise. And I believe one of the homeowners is also present here today. You may want to add a few other things.
Okay. Thank you. Any other comments? Might as well, let's just stick with online for a second so we can go through those, and we'll keep things orderly. Any public comments, not members of the planning commission, but public comments or questions regarding the application?
My name is Chris.
Go ahead, Chris.
And my name is Chris Masenko, and I am a resident in the Bay Street Cottages. And I think Amy has put all the information together in a rather close piece of information for everybody to review. There are as she mentioned, there are at least 2 cottages already experiencing drainage problems. They've gone to great extents in terms of investments on sump pumps and other means of diverting the water. And with the hedge now being gone, if there is a higher elevation in the second building and that, there is great concern about what can happen to the cottages to the south. So, thank you.
Thank you. And we'll stay just one more check online. Are there other people attending online that have comments that they'd like to make?
Yeah, hello, this is John Spalding. Hello, this is John Spalding. I'm the owner, my wife and I are the owners of Cottage 11. And just following up on what Chris says, ours is one of the cottages that has had drainage issues. And we have a lot of money's been spent to put in a membrane and a sump pump, which has helped. But, we're very concerned. We really just the construction that's going on now, the slope of that existing roof looks like it would tend to drive the water directly south to the cottages. So we're concerned about that. So I am hopeful that with the plans that were approved for the existing building that's almost finished now, that there is a water runoff mitigation plan that will divert that water away, and that the city will make sure that that is complied with. Also, the hedge, I mean, if you're there in Harbor Springs and you're there at City Hall, when you drive out on Zoll Street, you'll see it looks very different than it did a few months ago. I was actually there last week. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia right now. And it's a completely different view. That tall green hedge that was there that provided privacy for both of the properties, most of it is gone. We were never consulted about that. It just happened. So we're really hopeful that the petitioner has got some plans for replacing that hedge for privacy for both of us, and also ensuring that there's not any additional, that any water runoff from this project or whatever else may be built will be diverted away to Zoll Street or some other appropriate place. So those are my concerns. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John. Any other online comments at the moment? Okay, we switch over to public comment from people in attendance at the meeting. If you would, just please state your name and again, direct all comments to the planning commission, please. Yes, sir.
Raul Lepage, we're immediately to the west of the property. And I don't have an image of what's being contemplated. We've had some other preoccupations and we were not in Harbor Springs enough to get a grasp of it. This would be a new structure different from what now exists. Is that right?
Correct. And there may be that's the structure itself, and what's being, if the zoning change were to be approved, then what could be proposed is this guest or cottage second garage rather on the west side of the property. So it'll be the very back of this lot that comes off.
And the elevation matter is the entire yard, so to speak, as it presently exists, intended to be lifted somehow.
That would be a good question for the applicant. Is there a grade change proposed for the existing structure?
If there is any need for a grade change back there, we certainly would have to have everything back where it exists now at the edges of our site for code. I do know that the addition they put on last year is fully gutted, so if we're having water issues, it must have more to do with that hedge, I'm guessing.
Okay, and it does appear, just for the record, that a significant portion of the hedge is on this subject property. I don't know, at least as represented in this drawing that we have. The easterly 47 feet appears to be on the Bay Street Cottage property to the south. So, any other
access is along the south border?
Good question for the applicant. That looks like there's approximately 10 feet, but to the property line to the edge of the garage.
Yeah, I mean, I think to get a show car back there. It's not a car you drive every day.
Right.
So if they want to take a show car back there along the side, there should be plenty.
I'm not aware of any, is there any requirement that you can think of in the zoning code that you have to have a garage served by a paved or solid driveway?
No, there is no requirement in the zoning code for a paved drive.
Okay. Or
It could be just a grass area, or it could be, you know, brick pavers. There's a variety of different ways. They haven't disclosed that at this point in time.
Okay.
But in the rezoning, it's not required, but it's, you could ask the applicant if she knows how they're going to gain access.
I know
with
for
the
sure
service.
there's no intention to pave all the way back to that garage.
Okay.
Like to keep it long. But if there are any water issues, I was not aware until now. I'm sure the builders, if you can move, I'd be happy to address those if we're having issues.
And just so maybe a quick review of the, you know, as far as the site plan approval, obviously in a commercial setting, you need to retain all your water on site. In terms of the residential application like this, it's not always necessarily required that they have a drainage plan as part of the application.
But the requirement is they also need to retain their water,
Right.
or manage their water on site also.
Yeah.
And
we've
and
had
I
a-
know that it's fully cut. So.
Yeah, we've had a lot of concerns and problems in the city because of the high water table of the lake.
Yeah.
With especially low level properties so close to the water's edge with groundwater. It's just coming up. We have some homes over on Main or 3rd Street that have deeper basements that they're running sump pumps almost constantly.
I have another question.
Yes, sir.
You can dig and contemplate a basement, you might find a spring.
Yeah.
There's some consideration for that. I've seen it in the neighborhood, a couple of places, and it can be pesky and it can last a while. It's gonna be a basement. How deep does it go?
Oh, no basement at all. Just the slab.
Any other comments or questions? Again, just please state your name and then, go ahead. Mark.
Mark Rondell, my wife and I own property just to the north of the property under discussion here. First of all, I guess I want to say that I'm philosophically in support of what's going on for two reasons. I guess most everybody here knows that I operate under philosophical principles. But number one, I'm very much in favor of all sorts of development in the city. So a new structure is fine by me. I'm also very much in favor of people being able to do with their properties what they choose to do with them. And so if the ASUs choose to do this with their property, I'm in support. However, hearing the discussion. Hello? Hello?
Go ahead, Mark. I think there's somebody, maybe a background conversation online.
Hearing the discussion, I'd like to ask the commission a question about the rezone. In Larry, in your write-up, you mentioned that some of the justification for the rezoning is that it abuts, and Jessica, you mentioned this, is that it abuts a large section of property that's zoned R2. So I'm thinking about my property that adjoins this. If I were to come before you folks and ask for it to be rezoned, my property to be rezoned RM, how might you feel about that, hypothetically, as opposed to the ASUs coming before you and asking to be downsized? I'm in a sense asking for an upzoning on my property if I were to do so. And I'm thinking about what might happen down the road if I choose to repurpose my property to RM, for example, and that abutment has been removed at this point. So I guess I would like to hear some feedback from the commission as to how you would look at this and feel about it.
Yeah, Mark, I guess that my general thought personally is that oddly enough, most of the requests we get for rezoning, and there've been a few down Bay Street over the years as we get closer to town, have been downgrading the uses, diminishing the density and any potential for a commercial use, which isn't really applicable here. But a lot of the TRs, there's some limitations like the Askews we're running into, where you may have more options, but they may not be the options that most homeowners want. And in our market, typically aren't necessarily always highest and best use, even though the way the zoning code is written, some towns that may one of those more expanded uses may be more valuable, but in our case, it typically is a single family home with a extra garage or guest quarters. So I think my personal experience has been rezoning in a more dense direction has always been a more challenging thing to approve, really, because we weigh a lot of the rezoning on some of the input, obviously, from the public. And a lot of times people are not in favor of more density, they're in favor of less. So that's just as a general theory. But as far as what we're discussing tonight, it's the application we have before us, not necessarily a hypothetical that may or may not come. So we kind of have to focus on that. Anyone else have any comments or response? Did you want more response or just?
Oh, please.
Okay.
I agree with Andrew. I don't think that something that's not to be discussed today needs to be opinion on that when we're here to discuss this project only.
Well, except that what we've been asked to do is rezone, and rezone is a philosophical question that we have to think about, and we think about what we think is best for the city, for future development, for what we think should be happening or could be happening in the next couple of years. It's not an isolated event when you're talking about rezoning. If this were coming to us and this were just like a site plan review, yeah, I got a lot of questions from a site plan perspective, but this isn't a site plan review. This is a request for rezoning. And I have a lot of hesitation about a rezoning because that is a larger philosophical question.
Right. And Mark's question was how have they gone in the past? And in the past, typically a rezoning to a more intensive use has been much harder to obtain than
what has happened in the past. But I think that's to Mark's point, which is to say, is that necessarily the way that we should be thinking about this, which is that should we be thinking about going to a less dense use of this particular property simply because it abuts other things? And then you could make that argument for just about any lot in the city, or adjacent to another lot, and suddenly we're all R1 and we have no other uses because it's next to an R1. And I understand that this is kind of a part for our discussion, but the question was asked. So
to the point.
I would just recommend that we get the public comment first.
Yeah.
Right.
Have these responses into the discussion.
Yeah, and I think it was more just in the response to Mark's question. So I guess the answer is that, we can't give you an answer because you're not the applicant, but in the general sense, rezonings are a far bigger issue than just simply a site plan approval.
So. Okay, that is sort of what I'm speaking to. I think Mary Catherine is beginning to formulate the bigger question. I would like to see this as a consideration of a rezoning, a serious rezoning. This was designated RM at some point in time. Why were those reasons? Why was that done? And shouldn't that be part of the consideration of whether or not they should be rezoned, or is it simply because it abuts one type of parcel or another? And in that case, if this were rezoned, that would preclude my use of the abutment argument, if I were to choose to repurpose my.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I just had a question. Could another approach be if zoning does turn out to be a big issue to get a variance within RM district to allow her to, or allow them to build a structure? And you don't have to deal with it.
I think that's a difficult variance request. My reasoning for that is when you ask for variance, you're asking to do something that other properties within that zoning district are able to do, but it's a limitation of your property specifically that's preventing you from doing it. So with that idea, show me another property in the RM district that is permitted through the zoning code to have a structure, an accessory structure that's taller than 15 feet. So, you know, height variances, I think, are very difficult to do. And I think that would basically be the thought behind that is what's the specific limitation of that property that prevents you from complying with the zoning code of the RM district. But again, I think we're speaking more to what they're proposing to do after they get their change and less to the specific issue of what does the community see as the best use of this site to be used as an RM property, which could be used for multiple dwelling units or R2 or R1 or some type of single family or duplex use, which is the question to be asked.
Again, a bedroom, would that then be considered multiple dwelling unit? And it would be okay?
If it had a bedroom, it would be considered guest quarters and it would have to go through the special land use approval for guest quarters. And we would look at that in that vein.
But that is.
But the height would still be an issue.
The height would still be
In
an
this
issue.
zoning,
If
existing
if
zoning.
they applied as a multiple unit project and had a big garage and a small residence. That's just that's a good question.
Guest quarters are not permitted within the RM district.
So how would they ever take advantage of this being RM?
Building of, I think, a larger building that would have multiple units, an apartment building of some type, something along that nature.
Cottage companies detached.
Well, but they went through, I believe, a special approval process for that. Would be my guess.
It requires a big piece of property. That is the issue.
Wasn't it
So-
the write-up say that, that it was left as RM because the hope was when all that zoning was done, was that the hotel that they tore down would rebuild and expand. I thought I read that.
That was
it. You did, yes. That was part of my report.
So
that's why that parcel is RM instead of R2. Or part of it. Yes.
That parcel was zoned RM long before the hotel was being.
Do we have additional public comments?
Yeah,
We could get into the explanation of my recommendation.
Appreciate that. So we'll, any other public comments? But that is a good question. Any other comments from anyone in the audience or anyone new chime in online or have anything to add? Okay, if no other comments at this time. Do we have a motion to close the public hearing? And I would just clarify, we can still take questions and answers from the public while we're doing our discussion. It just allows us to talk a little bit more and ask all the questions we want to ask too. So
I make a motion to close the public portion of the meeting.
support?
Yeah.
Any further discussion? Okay, please call the roll.
Beth Rahalan,
Yes.
Mary Catherine Hanna,
Yes.
Emily Dubay,
Yes.
Jack Deegan,
Yes,
George Pete,
I lost a connection.
well, it might be that they have their mic muted
Oh, sure.
and they need to unmute their mic.
George Pete.
Getting there. Yes. Sorry.
Thank you, George. Bill Mulder,
Yes.
Mark Boudet,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Al Dykner.
Yes.
Motion passes.
And now we just discuss the application here at the planning commission level, and I think it might be a good place to jump off, having Larry sort of review his memo and highlight those points.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As stated, the applicant desires to rezone the property from its current multiple family designation RM to an R2 zoning district. The current zoning district allows a whole variety of uses. Apartment buildings, townhouses, multiple family buildings, two-family buildings, a rooming house, a boarding house. Those are all uses by right. And given there's about 20,000 square feet of this property, they could get, depending on how many bedrooms in each unit, anywhere from about 4 to 8 dwellings, living units on this piece of property. It would be much more intensive than a single family home. Special land use is permitted on this piece of property. Now, obviously, some of these won't work because of the lot size, which is only about 1/2 an acre. Hospitals, convalescent homes, housing for the elderly, senior housing. We have the ability to put in single family detached condominium units, kind of like what's just immediately south on the Bay Street project. And there's rules and regulations about how those things work, and I'm not going to get into all of those here this evening. What they want to do is use the property as it's historically been used as a single family home, continue that use. They want to build an accessory building on the property at the west end of the long 1/2 acre piece, and basically have an outdoor gathering spot with a fireplace for gatherings of family and friends. This parcel is a northerly parcel of the RM zoning. There's pieces to the south of it and pieces southwest of this area where there's 2 existing condominium projects that currently are zoned RM. Adjacent to the north, adjacent to the west is R2 zoned property. R2 districts allow single family duplex properties. They do allow guest quarters. The intended purpose of this is to maintain the single family home and put up an accessory building. The applicant has stated here this evening, it is not their intent at this time to put in guest quarters, if I heard that correctly. And she's nodding her head, yes, that is correct. The key philosophical element that guides a rezoning in any community in the state or in the country is the master plan. Something we've been working on now for about 18 months. And top of page 2, I provide a bit of an analysis for you because this property in question is zoned multiple family residential, but it's master planned for single family residential. That is the biggest guide that we have. The process of rezoning the property must take into consideration several elements. One is what can be permitted under the existing zoning of the property, which we've just talked about. What can be permitted under the proposed zoning, which is single family or duplex dwellings. And also taking into consideration what the applicant has stated they're doing. The evaluation of the master plan recommendation for the subject property and the surrounding area. This piece of property in the surrounding area, including Mr. Rondell's piece, is all master plan for single family residential. That is our policy guide that helps us make a recommendation to the city council as to should we or should we not consider rezoning a piece of property. Even though it's zoned in a more intensive state right now with multiple family. I can remember old conversations about the reason this piece is because it's a long, narrow piece, that it could have been included with the old motel that was there when that was redeveloped, that piece could have been incorporated and had a larger multiple family complex there. When Bay Street cottages went in, that piece of property was not included. There's a variety of reasons, I'm sure, but I'm not going to speculate as to why that happened. Today, we have a property owner that wants to maintain it as a single-family home. To accomplish that and all of the elements associated with that single-family home, their desire to downzone the property to R2, to allow them to do the things that they like to do on that property, which all their adjacent single-family zone properties to the north of them have the ability to do. I provided you with a recommendation and some rationale as to why. In that, which is a positive recommendation that we provide to the city council for rezoning this property from RM to R2. Questions, thoughts, comments? Mr. Chair.
Anyone, let me start with planning commission members here at the table, and then we can go online just to keep it somewhat orderly.
Okay.
Thoughts or comments to either on the application itself or Larry's memo?
You know, my first question, Larry, and are there setbacks that are shown on the site plan? Are those the setbacks for its current zoning or for the zoning they're asking for?
For the zoning we're at.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, I can, you know, I look at the zoning map and it wouldn't be spot zoning or anything like that. It's certainly, the lot size speaks to me that it can be either stay in RM or go to the downsize, the down zone level pretty easily. I just have a real problem that it's not meeting the existing, you know, the setbacks that you'd be asking for this new district. That's a non-starter for me. But as far as the rezoning, I understand Larry's logic, looking at the plan. You know, I guess another question I had was, when was the last time we rezoned something there?
I can answer that.
Thank you.
Since I've been here, we had properties between John Demmer's home and along Bay Street right here. And you can see them on that map. There's about 6 or 7 homes that were zoned RM. And again, not meeting the use or style of the RM district, more in line with the use of single family homes. Those properties came in as a group. And I think it was primarily started because a number of property owners in that area, and we can see that on the map there, the RM properties on the left-hand side there, below the R2, those properties, they had some zoning variances that they requested based on some of the limitations of the RM district. They had some things that they wanted to accomplish as single family homes, as far as like building garages and whatnot.
Right.
So I think it was about 3 or 4 years ago, those property owners got together and filed an application for rezoning of all those properties. And we did end up moving them from RM to R2.
Was that also part of the master plan?
I believe the same
recommendation.
And Jeff, did they go to TR because the residential part of TR is R2?
No, they went from RM to R2.
So this map is.
So it's just not on this.
Right. This is the map that was included in the original master plan, and it needs to be updated. We are working on that process.
And those were the rezonings that I most recently remembered that we had. So it was for similar reasons, frankly, to this request, I think. Any other comments or thoughts, philosophical or otherwise?
So the role of the planning commission is to make a recommendation to council about whether we support this or not, is that correct?
Yes.
So we're not to address any aspects of the site plan, of anything else. It's really all about the zoning and the use of the land.
Yes.
All right. Great. Because I'm very sensitive to the issues that have been raised by neighbors and that kind of thing, but that isn't for us to deal with tonight. So my concern is, I think as we're developing the master plan updates, we're going to be under pressure and maybe making a move to more intensive uses of property in the city. And this would be a move away from that direction, but we don't know for sure that we're going to go.
So we have no clue yet.
Right.
We haven't had that discussion.
That's right. So I would be hesitant right now to give this approval if we don't know what our direction is going to be at the macro level. And it feels like it's a big deal to change zoning to allow 6 extra feet of height on a accessory building. And that's what this whole thing boils down to, that 6 extra feet. No adjustment.
Well, actually, I think the bathroom would not be allowed, the outdoor gathering area with the roof would not be allowed either. So it's quite a.
I'm in the zoning code and I didn't see anything about that in RM. So that we do allow accessory buildings, but the height is capped at 15 feet, right? Are there other aspects that are
Jeff, you see
forbidden?
that made in the living space?
Well, I think in the initial conversation, there was talk about it upstairs as well.
No, I thought the bathroom and that porch. Okay.
Larry, do you have thoughts on that? I know there's a point where we start talking about living space as opposed to accessory use.
Well, an accessory living space upstairs is not permitted in the RM district, period.
Right, but just an accessory building would be.
Yes, an accessory building is permitted, maximum height of 15 feet. Their setback is a bit different for other accessory buildings. In the RM district, it's a 30-foot setback as opposed to the R2 district, which is illustrated on the site plan, which is for an accessory building. I don't recall it, Jeff. 12 feet
in the R2 district.
Yes.
10. Right here, it's on the screen.
Okay.
So
there's a number of differences of how an accessory building is
but for
regulated.
the proposed plan is the only property 6 feet above the 15 foot.
No, he just also mentioned the location. There's a 30-foot setback in the RM district.
For our
Right.
30 feet
on
from
the
the
side
rear.
and the rear. I didn't see that.
No, just the rear yard.
Just the rear yard.
Yeah.
And they're proposing 17.4.
Which is consistent with the R2 proposed setbacks of that zoning district.
I'm just trying to see if there's a way that we would consider a variance or we consider actually a change in the RM zoning for some aspects that might make sense for this project as well as others.
Well, the variance idea, there's no foundation for what's the hardship on the property where I can't reasonably use the property as it's currently zoned. I would be hard pressed, in my opinion, to figure out a rationale if I were representing the SQs to go to the zoning board of appeals and ask for relief from the rules. So, my biggest foundation is we have a master plan. It's the official document of the city of Harbor Springs for setting forth a policy how we want land to be used. Okay. We cannot, in my opinion, second guess that right now, what we might do in the future, whether it's a year from now or 3 years from now when we get done, okay, or this summer, I don't know. So it's in my opinion not a good foundation to use, is that we're in the process of doing this and this may be different.
And yet in our discussions on the master plan, we halted a number of things to say, well, we better wait until the master plan is finalized. We
were talking about amending the zoning code, the verbiage of how we regulate things, because we didn't have a clear
But this
direction
has
yet.
been sitting there in the master plan for what, 10 years, 15 years with nothing happening with it. No, I mean, this board hasn't decided that we need to go make that change in order to make it come into compliance with the master plan.
Well, we
in that
generally
time.
don't approach landowners about rezoning their properties. It usually goes the other way. And I guess even if the master plan review process, we determine that, and that's going to require a lot of public input, which we don't have yet, that we're going to intensify, we may entertain intensifying uses in certain portions of town. I don't imagine that this, what's the dimension on the street? 75 foot by, 200 and some foot parcel is going to be the place that we plunk down a more intensive use.
Well, it's already,
And I don't-
that's already available under its current zoning.
Exactly. So where will we go from here? I don't think that downzoning I don't believe, and I don't want to speak for a lot of the neighbors, but I suspect if we had an application in front of us, instead of to renovate the home as they've done, to tear down the home and to build one of the permitted uses under RM, I don't know that there would be a significant amount of support for that idea based on what surrounds
Because
this
it would be
property.
an allowed use. They would get to.
Exactly. So-
But
Right. So I
and
mean,
they
to me,
bought it knowing what
rezoning, the
the use was.
rezoning of this piece from a philosophical viewpoint is it makes sense based under the current rules of the road, which call for it to be single family residential. And what are the likelihoods with the size of the home that is currently located that basically precludes any significant access to this backyard, and the investment that they made to improve it most very, very recently. What are the odds that this back 50% of this lot are going to be used for more housing or things that we might like to see in other parts of the city? Are we just going to hang this thing as RM for eternity because we might like to see more intensive residential use in other parts of the city? I don't see the logic in that.
I guess I feel like you can make that argument about pretty much any parcel.
I don't agree.
there. This parcel is a weird one. It's long and skinny. I understand the
Right.
frontage use. I understand that this is not the best parcel to be, the best parcel to have to die on the hill around rezoning, downgrading the zoning from residential multiple to R1, because I understand all of that.
Yeah.
But I also don't like the idea of down zoning. They bought the property knowing what the zoning was. They understood the uses when they bought it. I have a real issue with this, but I'm one member of the planning commission.
Sure.
So.
No, and I respect that opinion. I just think in this case, it doesn't, I think if we are basically, Mark makes a good point. They are taking advantage not just of the 6 foot difference that Bill pointed out, which is really what we're permitting. I believe to the south, immediately to the south of this portion of the property, the Bay Street Cottage project, those are parking spaces. And then their first structure you see in Bay Street is a garage, if I'm correct. And then you get into where adjacent to the attached garage that they did, that's where the residents themselves start. And if I'm getting that wrong, let me know. But I think it would be an interesting decision for me personally to say you can't have 6 more feet of height and build a garage, but you can have a fraternal lodge. I mean, there's some oddities that are available to you in RM that I don't think people would necessarily see as a
I think
benefit
it's
to
silly that
town.
they can't have an accessory dwelling or even an accessory
Right.
unit in an RM district.
And I
I
don't
think
feel
that's
we're
kinda
setting,
silly.
if we were to choose to rezone this, downzone this, I don't think that sets precedent for downzoning all over the city. It typically is the request we get from landowners who pay the taxes and ask us for things. We aren't necessarily going to upzone somebody's property if they don't want us to. We just don't get that request very often. Economics don't frankly work usually. So maybe that'll change and that's fine. But what we have tonight is a request to downzone. I do like the removal of some of these sort of extraneous uses for the back of that property. There's somebody who was being more creative and had an interest, they could potentially request, and they are uses by right, which is a different thing than special land use by a long stretch as far as the latitude that we have to say yes or no. And my guess is the ability of a landowner to kind of push that point beyond us if they wanted to. So those are my thoughts. I think Mark makes a good point that, okay, is in consideration, and we don't, it is interesting, it is really, really far in the backyard. I don't know that it impacts the neighbor immediately to the north, I think they're in process. Is that the house that's under construction that's just being finished? Champlain is not the current owner. Anyway, I don't know that they've appeared to say if this being behind them is an issue, but those are my thoughts. I think it's a reasonable request based on the master plan and the elimination of some potentially unattractive uses should a future property owner choose to take advantage of those uses by right. I've talked enough. Any other comments?
Could I ask a clarification?
Yes, sir.
Again, what is to the west? What is the setback?
This setback for the building that's being, he's, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, I think it's 17 feet 4 inches from the west line.
And that would be does that reflect to the other side? They consider rear yard?
That is rear yard, yes.
That's the rear yard. The setback is less for an accessory structure. It's less than that, and I would have to look up what it is. I don't want to.
It's 10 feet. I think in most, like an R1 district would be maybe 10 feet for an accessory building.
Well, R2 it's 10.
R2 it's 10 feet.
Yeah. So the rear yard setback for an accessory structure is 10 feet from side yard, rear yard, or 5 feet from any other structure.
And so if this was rezoned, they would be exceeding that by some 7 feet 4 inches.
So I didn't understand that in the beginning. I misunderstood what it said because it does the rear lot line there, that's for the RM, correct? And then if it goes to R2, that's only a 10-foot setback, so they're well within the setbacks of R2 that they're building.
Well, the setback that they show on their site plan is the setbacks in the R2 district for the principal building.
Right. But they're just not showing the one for accessory building, which is 10 foot. So rear yard. Okay. Good to know. So if we were to make a recommendation to council to approve this, we'd be recommending that they create a new non-conforming lot, right? Because we have a problem with the width. There's a 100-foot minimum width.
Well, there's a 100-foot minimum width for the RM district as well. So that's an existing non-conformity that would not go away, but would also not be worsened.
So we're not increasing the non-conformity, which we can't do. Correct. Any other comments or questions from the planning commission members on the request?
On the Zoom, any planning commission members? Have any comments?
Yeah.
No.
George Pete here. Typically, I would not be in favor of suggesting that this be rezoned, but this seems like a pretty oddball lot to begin with. And these people have invested a fair bit of money in this. I don't know, this house looks like it's going to be pretty nice, and I don't think it's going anywhere for quite some time. That's
Anyone
all.
else? Thank you, George. Anyone else online? I guess the one question I have is some of the concerns raised by the neighbors as to drainage and the privacy. I think we did clarify tonight, just for my own memory, that the drainage would need to be retained on site, both for the addition that has been completed and any future buildings, whether it's RM or R2. That's nothing to do with the zoning district. That's all to do with general requirements in the zoning code itself.
That is correct.
Okay. And then as far as the privacy, my memory's not that great, but I think Bay Street Cottage Association owns the fence that I'm picturing running along the north side of that parking lot. If somebody's in Bay Street Cottage can clarify that. And then there's no dispute over the ownership necessarily of the hedge that was removed. It was just a concern whether that hedge somehow was helping the drainage situation as opposed to removing it, which would hurt it. I don't know if there's any consideration on the applicant's part to replace any of the hedges that's been removed, or we don't request people to, it's not part of the application, but I don't think that the ownership of that hedge is in dispute, to my knowledge. Is it?
It has not been raised to my knowledge.
And I know there was, Amy, is that anything that's in dispute, the ownership of the hedge, or was it just more the potential theoretical benefits of that as far as the drainage?
I don't think the ownership of the hedge is in dispute based, it looks like there's survey flags. I was just out there the other day. The black fence posts that are in there, I believe those were put in there. They were not by the association. It's not on their property. The issue with the hedge really too is we're not sure if that's something that was required to be there when the Bay Street cottages were built as a buffer between the two properties. So that was why we raised that concern, because of the privacy and for drainage, and also is it something that the association is going to be responsible to put back in? And by that I mean, if a hedge is required to be there and it was already pre-existing, they obviously wouldn't put in another hedge, but now that it's removed, is that something that they're going to have to go back and take care of?
Jeff or Larry, I mean, I don't see any circumstance under which site plan requirement would have been made on an adjacent property.
We did some research on this just before the meeting because we knew that was a concern. And I believe what we found was that there's no requirement regarding the proper line as a whole, but there is a requirement for a project like Bay Street Cottages that they do have to have some type of a view barrier parking area in neighboring properties.
And that's what then there is an existing, and the fence, there's a white, Amy, is there, that white fence is still there that's on the Bay Street Cottages side of the south line, or north line rather?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay. So they didn't, this applicant didn't do anything with the fence that was
No,
crossed.
not with the white fence. It's the, I don't think any fence has been taken down. It's the hedge was taken down and a fence looks like it's being put up.
Okay, and the hedge that was taken down is on the applicant's property.
Yes.
And,
Yes.
and there's no record of the site plan requiring Bay Street Cottages to maintain screening north of their own property line.
Not that we've been able to find so far.
Okay. I think
Okay.
those could- and the drainage needs to be addressed as a general rule of zoning, regardless of the zoning of the property.
Right.
Okay. And the driveway, we've determined there's no requirement for driveway. Noise, I do believe this proposed garage will be adjacent to the Bay Street Cottages parking lot, not necessarily a residence. So that's.
And I think the concern with that initially was, I think the thought was that there was going to be some kind of guest quarters in that accessory building, which I think applicant has indicated there is not. And the driveway, it was more an issue of how is the car going to get back there, not, are they planning on building something in, because there's just not a lot of space, but.
And maybe it would be worth explaining officially to the applicant, if they ever were to consider a guest quarters in this garage, what that would entail. So,
Hello, this is John Spalding, the owner of Cottage 11 at Bay Street. I did see some correspondence from another owner recently that suggested, and I can't say this for sure, but suggested that line of cedars, the hedge, was put in place by Bay Street Cottages at some point. So my guess is that if that's true, and I'm not sure, but if it was put in by the association, they probably tried to put it, right on the property line or right inside the property line. So, it's not completely clear to me. It might be worth double checking whether those trees that were removed, where they actually were with relation to the property line. Thank you.
I guess that's something that could be an independent issue between the neighbors as to whether or not trees were taken down on the wrong side line. I guess all the information we have is that based on the survey that we have here, or site plan rather, that they are north. The ones that were removed are north of the line. I guess that satisfies my questions about it. I think at this point we're either ready to entertain a motion or.
Chair, I just want to make sure no one else on Zoom has comments like Jack or.
Okay.
I do not.
Mark, are you ready to make a motion?
Yeah. I make a motion to approve the rezoning based upon a master plan. That's use. And also because the building as shown meets all the requirements of the R2 zoning district.
And am I correct? This is a recommendation to council?
Yes. Motion to make.
Motion to recommend.
Yes.
Approval of the change.
I'll second that.
We have support from Al. Any further discussion amongst the members on the motion that has been made?
Ready for a roll
Hearing
call?
none, call the roll, please.
All right, we'll start with Jeff Deegan,
Yes.
George Pete,
Yes.
Bill Mulder,
Yes.
Mark Boudet,
Yes.
Andrew Bowman,
Yes.
Al Dyken,
Yes.
Beth Rahali,
Yes.
Mary Catherine,
No.
Emily Dubay.
Yes.
Motion passes.
So that, just to clarify for anyone here, that would now go to the next city council meeting. Will be in, I assume there'll be more opportunity for input at that time.
City council has the opportunity, if they desire, to hold another public hearing. Or they can just take our minutes from this meeting and discussion as transmitted by the council representative Al to the council and debate the merits, receive public input if desired, and make a final decision. So they have a couple options there.
And it won't be the next council meeting, probably sometime in May.
Okay,
And
to
that's
get
what
on.
this Monday.
Okay.
A little shorter.
And just to add, knowing that there's a concern with rainwater runoff and drainage, I'll make sure that, because they will have to submit, as if this all goes through, they will have to submit a zoning application for the building. And we'll make sure that a drainage plan is part of that, knowing that there's a potential for concern there.
Great. Thank you, everybody who came and commented both here and online. Appreciate it. Moving on to zoom in because I cannot read this. Member comments. It's always the same, but I still have to. Like Ron Burgundy, just read the teleprompter. So, member comments. Any online member comments?
Nope.
No.
Any in-person member comments? I would say it's the meeting is, go ahead, you usually have something.
Couple quick things. So we do.
It's always
have-
good.
We do have a couple of topics already, applications for the May meeting.
Great.
We have a special land use request that we'll be posting notices in the paper for.
Okay.
And some other stuff. Also, then I just wanted to reaffirm, we have our next master plan meeting to take place on May 6th. Hopefully, everybody can make that. And then the next meeting on May 20th.
Great. Good information. Okay, meeting adjourned. Thank you.